your session?
It was really good.
Tell me about it.
I don't know if I can. It was special. It was deep. I wasn't here, which I always appreciate about my sessions.
Yes.
But I also do think I came in kind of with the intentions today of kind of regrounding in myself, coming back a little bit into my confidence. That's been a little off the last week or so.
I felt you coming into your center.
Yeah. So I think that
grounding.
was kind of what I was doing and feeling and remembering who I am, remembering what I am and what I'm about. So getting ready for this.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really excited for this conversation. I know that a lot of women, mothers in particular, can relate that once you have a baby, it's like you have all these dreams and visions and ideas of what it's going to be like. And then once it happens, it's maybe not that.
Yeah.
And you have to recalibrate and figure it out oftentimes on your own. And there's a season of the postpartum time and beyond and before where you're figuring yourself out and again, alone, not having the resources, not having the tools. So we're exactly going to talk about that from two different mothers' perspectives and other women holding space for us and asking powerful questions. But I'm really excited to have this conversation and to be just blessed by the presence of an amazing human, Kaitlin Wallace, who's also the founder of the Sunrise Coalition, which we're going to go all into. But this Jam Sesh today is all going to be about postpartum, mothering, connecting to self through mothering, and all things under the sun within that. So I'm super excited. Welcome, Kaitlin.
Welcome, Kaitlin.
Thanks, guys.
So obviously me and Lauren are not moms. You guys are. And several weeks ago, we went to the first Sunrise event at 50/50 Wine Bar. And Kaitlin shared her story, what she went through, how this was birthed. And I'm listening to your story and I'm like, wait, what is postpartum depression? And I went on a rabbit hole of rabbit holes looking on the internet of what is this? And the things that I was reading were literally scaring me, blowing me away in a way of there was no positivity. There was no hero story. And the way that I think that you've transcended what you went through into this beautiful, beautiful nonprofit that's going to be supporting so many women. I saw the emphasis in that story that I was like, this is what we need to talk about. This is what we need to share with other people, because I think your story is probably one that most people go through, or at least that's what the internet says. And I know for me as a person who's going to have a baby someday, I'm so grateful to have people like you who have actually made it through this journey and have such a story to tell, the hero's journey of it. So I think, Kaitlin, if you could maybe just start us off with what you're creating, why you're creating it, and kind of give us a debriefing of the journey you've been on to get to this point even.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm creating is the Sunrise Coalition. And in simplest terms, what we do is we cover the cost of care that insurance doesn't typically deem necessary, so they don't cover it. And what I experienced in my postpartum journey, especially the second time around, being in Chattanooga, was how hard it was to get adequate care. That I had really great pelvic floor PT, physical therapy in Colorado that was covered through my insurance. I had my second child in Chattanooga, same insurance, and what I was getting was I don't want to call it malpractice, because I do think the people there were doing the best they could under the constraints that insurance gave them. But it was not acceptable care. And I was talking to my physical therapist actually about it, and she was starting her own private practice because she recognized it as well. And, even just in that moment was I would love to have something one day that truly supports women. This is the standard in so many other countries, and in the United States, not only do most women not even know about what actual postpartum care should look like, they're not being educated on it. I had to learn almost everything at the start of it on Instagram, and then did my own self-research, my own self-advocacy both times. So in both pregnancies, I had to ask for my own pelvic floor PT referral. I, at the time that I had my first child, had a job that covered my therapy. And so that was instrumental, honestly, in supporting me in my pregnancy and postpartum. So I also had perinatal depression, which is something talked about even less than postpartum depression. And so that's just a whole, we'll probably get into it more. But everything that I'm building with the Sunrise Coalition is kind of a response to like, women shouldn't have to self-educate. They shouldn't have to self-advocate. And then once you do all of that work, you're going to end up having to fund your own medical care because insurance doesn't deem it necessary. And that's, I think, a wild miscalculation by insurance companies to begin with. But I'm not really a person that's going to like lobby for something to change. I'm just going to create something.
I love that.
To do it. And that's kind of how we came to be.
So your journey was basically you went through this yourself. You saw that there was a need. You saw maybe a different way to go about it. And then through that is what created Sunrise, where other women can get that same care. And I'm curious too for you, Monica, because as this was coming up, I'm like, Kaitlin shared her story and I'm reading all these statistics. I'm like, it was like actually like 1 in 7 women report having postpartum depression, but actually 100% of women have mood changes. So if it's something that is 100% of women, I'm like, that's a natural phenomenon. And another thing I was reading too was that a lot of times it's like the second baby. And that's actually what you kind of shared, Monica, too, of like going through the first child, you're already kind of in a hypervigilant state. And then to have the second baby just adds on top of that. So I think that with what's been said and what's been created, there is a different alternative way. But I was blown away at what is not provided.
Yeah. Well, it's mostly like downstream care too, like what insurance covers. And I think that's what's really cool and unique about what Sunrise is doing. It's like trying to get ahead of it and more support and, you know, things that typically, again, wouldn't be covered to be more like just, I feel like, again, I haven't been through that process of being a mom and giving birth, but it sounds like the main need is support. And it can look like so many different things.
And I think my story is totally different because like before even getting pregnant, I had known insurance would not cover the things that I needed. So this is why like awareness and education is the most important thing, that some people don't even know they need these things and they don't even actually know what they are when they do need something. So that's really what it is. But I was also blessed to have many amazing women who had gone before me giving natural birth, because that's what I wanted. Everyone wants a different thing. I wanted to have a home birth. I wanted to breastfeed my baby. I wanted to move through motherhood with grace and with flow and with just beautiful rhythm. And I had examples of that. And I think a lot of people don't even look to somebody as an example, or the only example is maybe someone, their sister, and maybe that's not what they want, but they don't know any other way. So I had beautiful examples, but also I had education and understanding that I have to basically craft whatever care I want and need beforehand. And that changed everything. And even just a shout out to a midwife in town, Shalmai, and her mother, Carolyn. It's women's, I'm going to get this wrong. Don't quote me on this. women's birth, women's wisdom. You'll research it in Chattanooga. No,
okay.
it's I'm so sorry for this. Yep. So actually, I had my home birth there, and they had us do classes. It was like every couple weeks, and towards the end, and it was every week. And so there were different topics every single time about postpartum, what to expect during birth, even what to expect during pregnancy, things like vaccines, just understanding options for everybody. That way, once the baby comes, then you're not like, oh, what now? What do I do? Like I felt super, super prepared. And then having a doula, she also did educational classes for us to just so we know what's coming. That's the biggest thing. If you don't know what's coming, then when it comes, it's like SOL. What do I do?
I want to get into what you guys experienced, but what you're saying, Monica, reminds me of something. I was reading something. It was called the grandmother effect, and it's essentially like they use the example of primates, and if there is a grandmother in the wolf pack or the apes, I don't know what they're called. If you guys want to Google that for us. But if there is a grandmother that's also involved, and I think this goes for societies too, they pass down wisdom. And it's not necessarily like your birth is going to be this, 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 and this, but they pass down what to expect, what to feel. And they had this study with monkeys, and the monkeys would jump into hot springs. Like that was something they always did. And the monkeys were, if they didn't have a grandmother or an elder woman that has already gone through this, they were jumping in with their babies, and those little monkey babies were actually dying. And I think about how simple that analogy is, but to have a sister or a mother or somebody else in your life that has gone through the journey, it's just like little clues and cues along the way that just help us, I think. And I'm so grateful to have you guys in my life too, but people that have already forged the path so that those same mistakes don't need to be repeated. But I think it'd be awesome if you guys could share a little bit about your journeys or what this looked like for you guys, because obviously it was something so monumental that you both decided to have a second kid and you decided to create a collective out of it. Monica supports women every day, Lauren and I do as well. But I'd love to hear maybe a little bit more about you guys' stories. I feel like that would really help bridge the gap, especially for me who's never experienced something like this.
What about our stories,
I want
Erica?
to hear. So, like, okay,
There's so much to
I'm,
say.
I'm curious, like, what you
Where to
went
start?
through, and then looking back, maybe what would you have done differently, or wish you had, or had awarenesses of, like,
Do you want to
because
go
it's not
first?
because you guys
Yeah.
both had different stories.
I just
Really
want to
cool.
hear. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I've always kind of thought about how I would share this conversation, and we've talked about it at home a little bit. But when I got pregnant with Tate, we weren't entirely sure where we were at on having kids. And so that, and he's the most perfect human being that's ever existed. So it's fine. It worked out really well. But being on paper ready for kids, but not like emotionally. And I just hadn't accomplished all the things that I wanted to accomplish in life before having children. That happened, and it was like really jarring. And it was intense. And I was already in therapy. And we kind of scrapped everything we were working on, and it really just became like support of moving through that pregnancy. And it was hard. It was really hard. It was really scary. I don't think it ever necessarily like got easier. But in that, I did have really great a support system of women. You know, they sent out a Google Doc that I've now sent out to other people, and it's like, here's what you need. Here's, you know, the books to read. Here's what to know. I was really like into weightlifting and fitness at the time, so that kind of led down a lot of the health journey for me. But I did also get like really plugged into what it looked like to have a natural birth. The blessing of getting to give birth in Colorado is like my hospital room had a birthing tub and a birthing stool, and I got to move around very freely and had, you know, all of the support in the world. And birth ended up being great, and Tate was born, and the very first thing I said was like, oh my gosh, he's real. Like, it was like this thing. And then when he came out, and I think it led to, so you talked about how second kids are more postpartum depression. What happens with the first kid and what happened with me was postpartum anxiety. And this overwhelming guilt that I had just spent the last like 9 to 10 months not sure if I wanted this child. And then I was like sick with worry and regret that like he was going to be taken from me for that, or taken from me. And I mean, it was paralyzing. I feel like I'm shaking a little bit, like recalling the night that my parents stayed for like 2 weeks. I don't think he slept without someone watching him for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But I like can so deeply recall him being in his room. My mom was watching him sleep for her, 3-hour window in between feedings. And I had to leave the room because looking at him was so overwhelming.
Wow.
And it was so terrifying. Just again, like at the thought of losing him. And I had to do some deep soul searching, some deep wrestling with God, and like, what would that look like? And if the worst possible thing happened, could I still like believe in joy? Could I still believe that things could be good after that? And I had to will myself to that point of like, if the worst thing that could ever possibly happens to me, would I be able to move on? And that was something I did mostly unsupported. I don't even know how to bring that to therapy. This is probably the first time I've ever truly talked about like the full depths of that. And it's funny because then I'm like, when what I would do different is I did get to have like as natural as I possibly could. My water breaks. I've never gone into labor naturally. My body doesn't want to do it. I don't know. But it always breaks. Like my kids come out. What I was not prepared for I'd like read all like the fun things about labor. So I read just the good stories in the Ina May book. And that was as much prep work as I did.
That's good though. Those books are gold.
It was great. And I was so ready. And I will still tell you that like birth is the coolest thing that you will ever do. And I love giving birth. And I so badly wish that I had been more prepared on how to deal with that. And I got to do that a second time. And was really like proud of the way that we worked through that the second time. But the first time I really was like, literally I just knew that a contraction was like a good like 5 cuss words. And I just literally screamed. I think the whole floor could hear me. It was a quiet night, so it like worked out. But yeah, I wish that I had been a little more prepared for that. And
was it like just you and JD in Colorado, or like were you around communities of people? Like how'd you even know what to look at or what to even prepare for?
I had friends that had given birth in birthing centers. Okay. So I had a lot of support there. And again, I cannot stress to you like how much a part of the story was that I wasn't planning on having a child like at that time in my life. So like when I called the first OB that I found, they asked if I was on my parents' insurance because I sounded like a scared teenager. And I was like, I'm 25. I'm married. I do have insurance. And I just kind of went with it. I actually ended up switching providers at 35 weeks with actually both kids, different stories though, because I went on my hospital visit. I was asking all of the questions of like, is this available? Is this available? Like again, having as like medication free of a birth that I could possibly have. And I asked the nurse at the end and was like, hey, you can like clearly see the type of birth I'm trying to have. Is this doctor who I want to see? And she deserves all the flowers in the world, was like, if I was in your shoes and I wanted this birth, I would call this person. And so I switched my OB then, and she was perfect. And again, I had the birth that I wanted, that I was prepared for.
Yeah.
Can I ask too, and thank you for sharing that story, like the postpartum anxiety, like how it sounds like you went to the depths of the depths. How'd you come out?
I mean, I think you go there and then you make a choice. And it sounds really simple because it's obviously like tumultuous. But I think you go to the depths and you kind of say, is this a thing that will stop me from believing in goodness? And I think we have a lot more control over that than we give ourselves credit for.
I think that's the good lesson there. It's like you were like it was happening and you didn't like, okay, not look at it. Like you had to. And for you, it felt like a choice, but it's still a choice.
Well, I think going to the depths was not a choice. I had to look at it or I was going to live like that forever. Right. And I wasn't going to live like that forever.
And I think generationally, most women don't. Because it's really hard to do that. And I think there's always an opportunity to go to the depths. We each have our own unique depths. Like mine was a deep, dark night of the soul that lasted quite a while. And now because I had to move forward with it, it's kind of like birth. Yeah. Like I'm like, I don't really have a choice if this baby's going to come out. And maybe I'm super uncomfortable right now, or I'm super scared during my first one because I don't know what to expect. I don't have an option to be like, hey, can I just take a 5-minute break?
Right.
It's not like that. But I think it's the same when the baby comes and situations happen. And throughout motherhood, it's like you have to keep moving on. Whereas before kids, you can be stuck on an issue. And that's the issue the rest of your life. Whereas I think one of the gifts of motherhood is that you have a choice to move on faster from it because you have to. That's at least my mentality. And I have to. I must for my children and for my well-being. Move forward from this.
And birth is unique because as women, we go through cycles of every single month. We go through a cycle. And I think that can be so repetitive that we go into like the same old. But birth is clearly a pattern interrupt there where your body's actually going through a whole different cascade of hormones and a whole different cascade of like reactions, responses, nurturing, all of that. And I'm like, that literally would change everything. And I think whenever I'm starting to really gain from this is that there is a way to surrender to it, and then there is a way to continue to forge your own path, because I think you guys are sharing a really beautiful story. And I also, like, people in my life that have had babies, like even going up into the birth, they're like, well, the doctor knows what they're doing, well, this will be what it is, this is gonna be okay. And they don't really, like, I hear advocacy from both of you where you started to learn, Monica, you literally had babies at your house. And that takes so much like self-advocacy of just like, I can do this. And I think that mentality going into a birth probably changes the course and trajectory of what happens afterwards as well.
And something you said, Caitlin, about jarring. It was jarring when, was the birth jarring or jarring afterwards when the baby was born?
I think afterwards.
And I've really thought about this a lot. And so like when you, let's say, meet moms at the park and they just had a baby or whatever, or your friend just had a baby and you ask them, how's it going? Oh, it's great. That's always the answer. And oftentimes it's not that. You're actually not doing great, and it's okay to not be doing great. And I think the scary part is saying I'm not great, however, I'm moving through it is the answer, versus I'm not great. And then everyone's like, oh, what's going on here? And then it's like, well, maybe I'm really not okay, versus I'm having a really hard day and my life is completely different than it ever was and ever will be. And I need to be, I'm working through it.
Yeah.
And we're here in it together. And I think that's the biggest thing. And also, like, movies growing up, like, it was always like a mom pushing a stroller.
Yes.
Here we go. Like,
Yeah.
that's what I thought. I thought when I had a baby, I would just have this baby doll. And like,
Yeah.
okay. Like, I had no idea what all it was. And I'm so grateful for the tools I had to be like, self-aware and be like, I can do this, tuning into my body and what it was meant to do, because if not, it would be a completely different story.
Yeah. And I like what you said, because I think I did do that a lot in pregnancy. You know, I was working at the time, and I was working part-time, so I didn't have enough, like, I wasn't making enough to get childcare. So I was like, hey, my baby's coming with me until you pay me more. And I'm going to breastfeed in meetings, and I'm going to pump in meetings, and that's my legal right. You can't really say anything about it. And I really prepped kind of people of like, I'm going to show up my full self with a baby, and I'll fight you about it if I need to. That's like, I really don't have another way to say it, but there is a level of self-advocacy and inviting people into it with you.
Yeah.
That I think is required. And again, I worked with some of my closest friends at the time. And so, yeah, it was that they were part of my community there, and they saw that and they held me through pregnancy. And I think if my pregnancy had been easier emotionally, I might have found myself in a position where it was like easy to be like, oh, this is great. But everyone kind of knew it was hard for me.
Was it hard because that's not what you expected to be pregnant, or what exactly about it was challenging? Just for people, everyone's going through this to some degree. So just, yeah.
I just wasn't ready. And like the simplest of terms, I just wasn't ready. Motherhood is huge and transformational. And, you know, we had all of these plans and dreams and the things we wanted to do. And JD was working and studying all the time. And, you know, even, and this is parenthood in a nutshell. You know, we had a 48-hour period that he was taking his first CPA exam that we could not have a baby. We very obviously had a baby in that 48-hour period, y'all. Like, it was in my birthing.
Like you do.
It was in my hospital notes that he had to leave the hospital at a certain time to go take his CPA test. And, like, they didn't move us to mom and baby because they knew he needed sleep. Like, in the early stages of labor, I was, like, more worried about him than I was about me.
That's tough.
Because so much work and effort. Like, we just weren't done setting the foundation of our life yet. And so it was just so unexpected. And I had never been fully thrown. I didn't think I'd be a good mom either. Like, I didn't think I would be good at it. So I just felt so thrown off course. And I think my whole pregnancy was like a real wrestle of faith for me, because I was like, oh, maybe mistakes are made. Like, maybe the divine doesn't actually know what's going on, because this feels wrong.
I think that the journey of going through this too, and what you're creating out of this, is people that are ready to support people through this. And I think too, like, it reminds me, my sister just had a baby like 9 months ago. And when she had the baby, I have like literally a huge Italian family. Like I can't describe it enough. But whenever this happened, my mom is staying with my sister for like literally a month. My aunts were there like every day, like all the time. And I asked my sister, I'm like, before this was happening, they were like planning and preparing that this would be the case. Even us, we were there for like a week after she was born, after my little niece was born. And I think like, I was like, oh my God, that must be like terrible to have that. And like, I was like, to have all those people staying with you and all this. And Aaron was like, that is literally what transcended me. And I asked my mom, I was like, why do you guys all show up like that? And my mom's like, my sister's name's Erin. My mom's like, Erin's not going to be in her right brain. Like, that's what they were saying to me. And I didn't quite like comprehend what that meant. But it's interesting because you can prepare on the outside as much as you want, but on the inside, you're quite literally like your hormones. We read this too. It was like 95% decrease in progesterone and estrogen, which will increase like prolactin and oxytocin and stuff. But I think about how much of a shift, like what other thing in your body goes through that much of a shift that 95% of the hormones switch. Like I don't think that happens. I don't have the research on this. Maybe you guys behind the scenes can get it, but I don't think there's anything in nature.
It's zero. Yeah, it doesn't happen.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't think there's anything in nature that actually does that radically. So it's like you can prepare and prepare and prepare, but when you're there, you're going to be completely different inside than you were. It's like it feels like a portal to me almost.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then for us too, as providers, and thank you for inviting us to be providers for Sunrise, but like we work with so many women who before pregnancy, after pregnancy, they see us, and I see this from them. I see them in a hyper vigilant state. Some of them are stressed, I would say, definitely stressed. But I also think too, like that hypervigilant state is actually like a natural response of evolution for our babies as well. And I think that whenever we can relax into it and know that, like, as you're saying, like the divine is the divine and it's going to guide us and protect us, like I think that has a huge piece of it too. And I'm curious what these supporters or these care providers, like what would be ideal? What would be an ideal support system? Like if you were to redo it all over again, like what would that look like? Who would you be seeing? Like would you do body work? Like what would you do if you were to do all this all over again?
Yeah. So and I keep talking about
Kinda
my
switch gears
Colorado.
there.
No, it's
Yeah.
great. And I keep talking about my Colorado experience, and I might kind of jump back and forth between this one because for the contrast of it a little bit. So again, and it's obviously the care that was provided to me is entrenched in with what the Sunrise Coalition is, but through my job, I had free chiropractic care, free massage therapy, free therapy, and just absolutely insane insurance. Like I think it cost me like $500 to have a baby. That's like insanely cheap if you haven't had a baby and walked through that process
If I
before.
could whistle, I would whistle at that $500.
Yeah.
Because that's a great price.
It was a great price. It's a great, like truly unreal. And so I was through my first pregnancy getting regular chiropractic care. I didn't do as much prenatal massage, but I had access to that. And I was doing some body work. I was, I even did, have y'all heard about the moxibustin?
Mm-mm.
So it's like this Chinese herb that you like, because Tate was transverse for like the entire pregnancy, which kind of made it like really
Up until the delivery?
up until about 37-ish weeks.
Whoa.
So I kind of had a more comfortable pregnancy as well because I didn't have a lot of pressure on me.
Interesting.
But they're like, hey, you're probably gonna have a C-section. He's probably not gonna flip at this point. So again, I reach out to my friends and I'm like, this isn't happening. I refuse. What are we gonna do here? And someone's like, oh, I have some leftover moxibustin. You burn it by your toes.
Oh,
And
yes.
the baby flips. And so he flipped like the next day. And that was really cool. I lost track of where I was going with that, but it was important to the story, I'm pretty sure.
Yes,
the
so
care.
support
Yeah,
that
so I
you-
had,
I was just saying, not
had
everybody
body
has an
care. I
Italian
had
family.
I had a lot of care for my first time. Again,
Yeah.
I went in knowing they told me to get a different OB, so I got a different OB. Again, I mean, I went as far as like I encapsulated my placenta the first time. I actually do think that was not for me and my body and my hormones. So I only took like the first week and then stopped.
And maybe not because you had such a challenging pregnancy
Right.
that it was riddled
Yeah.
with those emotions
I-
that maybe
That's
you needed to
interesting
break
point.
free from that. Yeah.
I 100% ascribe to that.
Mhm.
And it was, and again, I think it's something I wouldn't have been able to say then that I can
Mm-hmm.
articulate now, of like, I've always been fairly connected to my body and my intuition and my soul in that. So I knew pretty quickly, like, this is part of the problem. And it's really great for some people. It wasn't great for me. And that makes sense as to why. But so that was the first one. Then my gray was during COVID. So then all of a sudden I wasn't having chiropractic care. I just didn't have the same support.
Were you in Colorado then as well?
I was in Colorado for half of
Okay.
my pregnancy with Gray. We actually were visiting Tennessee when the world shut down. So we ended up staying at my parents' house because they were willing to watch Tate, and JD and I were both working remotely. So we spent 9 weeks here, went back to Colorado, had no plans on moving, and then 6 weeks later in a moving van back to Chattanooga. So I didn't have that same care, and Gray's,
we also didn't know you yet.
yeah, we weren't friends
Literally.
yet.
Yeah.
Literally, I know.
We were here energetically.
We were all here energetically.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I just didn't have access to that care during that time. But that his birth was a lot different. He was sunny side up, so he was face up, which means the hard part of his head and the hard part of my tailbone got to hang out a lot. And so he kept getting stuck. He almost broke it. He did actually get stuck for a little bit. And again, it was like every push my midwife would reach kind of for her tools. And I was like, oh, you're not doing it. And like truly willed that child out of me. And it worked out really well. But there was an obvious like difference in the births and the support that I had through that body wise. I think a perfect postpartum care thing, if I was to redesign the whole system.
Yeah.
Let's
hear it.
if I think every woman in labor could do well to have a doula, especially in Chattanooga. There's a bit of an OB desert here. So slightly different if you choose to give birth at home, which I think is great. It wouldn't have worked out for me with Gray because of some other complications. So it worked out. But I think I think having a doula is super important. In Hamilton County, for every like 5,300 women in the childbirthing years, there is one OB. In some of the surrounding counties, there are no OBs. And so we're also getting care there. So a lot of our doctors are just severely overworked. And so having a doula that can focus on you and support you, and even just like keep watching some of your own like metrics and medical numbers there, is so important. So not only can they advocate for you if something is going wrong, but they can also catch something that is not due to a doctor's inability or lack of care. They just simply like their caseload is so large. I think postpartum should just show up with pelvic floor PT in some capacity. And maybe that's just like one actual session of like figuring it out. Healing starts as soon as birth's over. I think having those conversations in the hospital, if they're going to come in and like press on your stomach, and I think that happens probably in home birth stuff is too. Also like work on your breathing, like start reconnecting with your core and your body as quickly as possible for proper healing. And again, it just starts with breath work and reconnecting to your diaphragm. And then from there, continuing that, I think it's wild. They talk about how babies have like 10 doctor's visits their first year and a mom has 1 at 6 weeks, which is a terrifying statistic. But most women, if they, are going to die a pregnancy-related death after childbirth, if you don't die in the hospital, it's going to come after that 6-week mark. So it's coming after you go to the doctor, and they're basically like, you're good to go. And you're like, I don't feel like myself. I don't look like myself. My entire life is turned upside down. And you're telling me I'm fine. And all of these issues that I'm having that there are like treatments for are just like a normal part of motherhood. Like, no. And it's really the storyline of how it goes from like already doing bad to significantly worse is like really clear, I think, from someone who's had that experience. And so I would say like at the 8-week mark, go in for therapy. That's 2 months in, go see a therapist. Maybe it's just like talking through it and that's all you need. Or it's a therapist, a trained professional recognizing that you need care. I got diagnosed with postpartum depression by Gray's pediatrician. And, at that point I was so deep in it that I was like, yeah, I mean, everyone has these type of thoughts. Like it, is as natural as breathing. It wasn't. That was not. You should not probably be fantasizing about killing yourself multiple times a day. Just let that be a PSA. It's not normal. But for me, it was, and I didn't know that until a doctor kind of called me out on it. And he told me something that's like really transformed the way I exist in this world. He's like, you don't get a gold medal. There is no trophy at the end of your life for white knuckling your way through. Like, you deserve to have help.
I love that.
And that, again, at that point, I took the help. I took medication. It took about 6 to 7 months. I also started working around the same time and started working. But it did. I remember about 5 months and being like, oh, I have energy. And like, it probably took a full 8-month period before I was like, oh, I don't remember the last time that I like had suicidal ideations. I don't really know when it stopped. And now, for almost 5 years past that, I'm like, I can't even, it's hard, like, it's not hard to talk about, but it feels so otherworldly.
Yeah.
I'm so disconnected from that space now. And so being able to provide therapy for women at that point to see if they need help and progress in that.
Yeah.
So that hopefully that can be a little shorter.
And I
like life-changing.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
And life-saving.
Yeah. What I'm hearing or gathering from that too is like, if you have that sense of support, because pregnancy, being a mom, all of that is actually a really natural thing. And there's a piece of intuition that you can start listening to as well. And I feel like if you're from, we say like a parasympathetic state, or like a calm, rested, digested, all that business kind of state, not just constantly on edge, like your body has that chance to relax and breathe. And for me, like I said, I have an entire Italian family behind me. You have really good care providers as well. Yeah. But I think that there's actually a wisdom in that I've seen even from you, Monica. Like, things will happen even just a couple, like with even our sister-in-law, somebody had a bee sting. I think it was lion, and we put you were like, put breast milk on it, and I'm like, where does that thought come from? And you're like, it's being a mom, it's being in tune with my body, it's flowing with this. And I think that a lot of those reflexes are actually really primordial, and that if we're actually supported in our daily lives, because I think like the modern woman is, we want the American dream of like having our own house, having our own family, where when we were living in villages, you probably had an entire group of people that went through it, like knew how to do the foot thing and all of that too. And of course, we're going to do our part as providers. But I think that whenever we're actually able to be calm, and that's just with anything, if we're in our center, we're able to move with life, we can actually start making these decisions out of discernment. And these things become like how how this baby survives. Like, I think about like other babies, like literally can't move their head, can't do anything. They are like literally like incapacitated human babies, whereas other babies can, as soon as they're born, like horses, start walking already or start moving, and they're a part of something. Where our children need the most amount of support. And I think about women, like the modern woman has the least amount of support in her life, and what that would do to create that. I don't know what that would be like, but I know for us, like with nervous system work, like helping somebody calm their body, calm their mind, they can actually start seeing a lot more clearly, where those things didn't just happen out of nowhere, where you had those thoughts. It was like one thing after another after another. And it makes me think too, like my huge family, like I said, I remember whenever I was younger and we would have like 50 cousins, and there would be like a baby that screamed or cried like literally 3 stories away. And my Aunt Shirley would be like, that's my kid. And I'd be like, how do you know? Like, how do you know? But I think those things are natural instincts that if we're able to actually be in our bodies, grounded, healed, and really present with it, those things actually are superpowers. And I've seen that from moms.
So that is what's really cool, because it sounds like that happened like in a sense with your story, but then also like getting to watch Monica. I knew Monica like before she was a mom, and you, like you said, like leading up to your birth and everything, like you did the most education, you had the tools, you had the community, the people. And so to see how you like grew and stepped up into that, and the wisdom that came and that still is there. And like, I mean, really, I think I told you I was there for Lion's birth.
That's right.
Like upstairs while she's downstairs.
Maybe share how
She was with Rocky. Yeah, I'd love for you to share that.
That changed my life. Well, how I like
all of it. Yeah, whatever you want to share.
Well, so I was in chiropractic school at the time, and you guys had told me before, like, hey, you want maybe someone to be with Rocky, just like during that.
Because Rocky was 2.5 when Lion was born, so Rocky was a baby.
Yeah,
and Yeah.
He was
He's a
small.
baby.
And I remember it was like around winter break, and I was here the whole winter break, just like thinking it was going to
Waiting?
happen. And then it didn't happen. So I go back to school in Atlanta, and you're with me too. And
Literally.
at like 1:03 a.m. I wake up and I'm just like wide awake.
Awake
and
for
then I get a
hours.
phone call from Matt. And I'm like, hello, on the first ring. Like, I was just ready. I was like, it's
We're like
happening.
pumping up the birthing pool, and then
You
calls
had
for
already
it.
made coffee. Like, it was like something really weird had taken over
I was
you.
just ready to go. But yeah, so I was just, and then I came, and it was just like a really beautiful day. It was a beautiful, like, leading up. It was a warm day, in January, which is really special. But then it was becoming close to that time. And so you were downstairs and I was upstairs with Rocky, just like playing. And like, I can kind of hear like what's going on.
Yeah.
And
The
I'm just
animal
like-
sounds.
But it was like, it was just that moment, again, a unique perspective of like, I'm not a mom, but I got to witness that. And you were already a mom at that point, but still just to that fierce, like depth roar, honestly, is what I heard. And, but really
True
just like so
lion.
much respect for you. And just again, to see how you've grown and how it shifted you. I think you're an example, not to say it's ever easy. And again, you're raw and real with that too. But to see you do it with such like alignment and authenticity is really, really beautiful to see.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. That really means a lot. And if I can like collaborate with the vision of like what it should be like, I actually feel like all these things need to be provided for women before she even gets pregnant.
Oh, absolutely.
Connecting to her pelvic floor,
Absolutely.
connecting to herself. Yeah, that way before you even get pregnant, you're in an aligned state.
Yeah.
And you know where you're going with it. And you know that a transformation is coming and becoming. And you know what you want to do with it versus just giving your power away and expecting someone else to save you. That's not how it's going to happen.
It's not how it's going to happen. And like, in every lifetime, yes, they talk about if like caring for women is not your thing, then like do it for the kids. Like child development starts in the womb. And caring for, if you have the option to get care before, and I didn't say this, but like honestly, I think Rev for new moms, pregnant moms, I could have used it like, and for me it is a lot more like soul work than body work. So I know I have kind of like a unique Rev experience maybe than some other people. Or maybe it's soul thing for everybody. I haven't like
it ends up being a soul thing.
Yeah, I haven't pulled a lot of
May not
people.
start that
the
way.
soul and then becomes everything else.
But to have this type of care, to have that type of support through your before pregnancy, through pregnancy, to be able to, we kind of touched on it with the placenta, like to put in the energy and the emotion into your body that you want for as long as possible. Like again, preconception, during pregnancy, postpartum, it all matters. And the earlier that you can start that, like I would tell anyone trying to conceive, like start getting this care now. Start knowing about your pelvic floor now. Start knowing about your core and your diaphragm now. Learn how, I really loved working out and seeing birth as an event, and prep your body for it so that you are ready, that you can go through it empowered, that you're not giving your power away. Like everything you said, I'm just kind of repeating because it's like that's it. And it can either be a thing where you feel kind of lost in it, or it can be a thing where you really step into who you're going to be as a mom and take ownership of that.
And then I think another thing, this is so outside the box of what people can be thinking about before even becoming pregnant, which you two are doing beautifully right now, is cultivating a community. Because I think isolation is the biggest thing for depression and any mood disorder. And that the stats, the people in the back can probably look up that. But that's the biggest thing is like I was actually solely alone when Rocky was born. Like my parents were still in Nashville. You guys were not here. Matt, we had just started the practice. So he was in the practice and I was alone, completely alone. And so I know what that feels like to feel isolated. And in the feeling of isolation, then you don't want to go hang out with people or go reach out to other moms when you don't know them, when that foundation wasn't established beforehand. So I think the biggest thing is that if you're wanting to have a baby or about to have a baby, really reach out to the people, the mothers or the people that you want to cultivate a relationship with beforehand. That way they can be there for you because people want to be there for you. That's like one of the biggest things that no one talks about.
Yes.
I feel like us oops, kind of live like a village anyways, but what you're saying, Kaitlin, is you can like create that village.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
I think about like when people actually gave birth back in the day, like I've literally told you this, Monica, I'm like, you will be there. Like
I
Matt,
can't
you
wait
can
to
come
be
too if
there.
you want, Lauren, obviously. And my mom's like,
Lauren, you can come.
obviously.
I made it.
But like my mom now, my
Barely.
sisters, my aunts, they're like, we're all coming. We've never seen a home birth. Like we want to be a part of that. And I'm like, you know what? That wisdom actually makes me feel so safe, so supported, not alone. But I think the same thing for all these other people. Like you can start putting these people in your corner to start just now even having conversations, and even the closeness that I have with both of you, actually, I feel like I could literally ask you guys anything and you guys would give it to me in the realest way, where that already eases like 95% of the scariness of it all too. So I love that.
Yeah.
Caitlin, I want you to kind of elaborate real quick before we can find out how we can be involved with Sunrise.
Yeah.
At the event at 50/50, you said something that was so beautiful, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something about taking care of mothers is what's taking care of basically the world.
Yeah.
But can you, maybe say what you said?
Yes. Oh gosh, I don't
Kind of,
remember exactly how I
start
said
that
it.
way,
but
whatever comes out.
Yes. Yeah, taking care of mothers, and I kind of touched on it already, so like that's a good segue. Like taking care of mothers is taking care of the world. It's taking care of her children. When a mom is supported, the way she shows up for her child is going to be better. And there are just again, it's one of those things that borderline feels like common knowledge at this point. Like a healthy, happy mother is going to have a child that is more likely to thrive, that is going to be happier and healthier, and they are going to move through the world easier, realistically, right? Women, when you take care of the mother, then all of a sudden you are also taking care of her partner and taking care of that relationship and allowing that to be repaired. Marriage and the early stages of child rearing are the hardest on relationships. And when the mom is feeling supported, and not just feeling supported, but like is actually supported, in the way that she's going to show up in her partnership is also going to change. And that relationship also affects the children, affects how they're going to show up in the world, but also, and again, affects the way they show up for their friends and for their community. And then it's going to show up in the way that they go to work, the way they give back to the society and the community that they are a part of, which again goes straight into that. Women are becoming more and more a part of the workplace. I think that's super cool, as all of us are women who like to work and contribute in that way. And again, you, especially like the work y'all are doing, if you are showing up, you don't have really the option to show up here strung out from motherhood, right?
Not at
Because
all.
the work
Yeah.
that you're doing here is important,
Yeah.
and you need to be able to be here in that space. And if you weren't supported, you wouldn't be able to do that.
Right.
And again, it's how well can we support women so that they can go and again support our community. There's just did like a few stats to throw at you. Women's health is just wildly underfunded. However, with that, there's like an estimated 3 to 5 time return on investment on when you invest in women's health. Earlier this year, I think it was in February at the San Francisco Health Summit, they're talking about how investing in women's health alone could put $1 trillion back in the economy by 2040. But like, yeah, I don't know. Is it important? Hard to say.
Stats are just stats.
It's fine. I'm not going to get heated. But again, it's just like there's some really obvious ways that supporting women, and you look at the happiest and the healthiest countries in the world and the most economically stable countries in the world, and they are countries that take care of women. They're countries that take care of their moms. They're countries that have longer parental leave, better child care, like maternal and paternal leave. Like they take care of the family as a whole, and they don't just see it as a like, we're helping these people out because they're so important. It's like, no, we see the importance of our future. We see that what we do now is going to matter later, and we're going to invest in that. And so when we invest in women, then we invest in their families, we invest in their communities, we invest in their societies. And what I just really love about getting to start this work in Chattanooga is that health is so much ingrained into this culture anyways.
Mhm.
We just became a national park city, which I
That.
think is so cool
So
because
cool.
30 years ago, they were like one of the dirtiest cities in the country, and they took that so seriously. And I
No
think
one wants that title.
no one wants that title.
Like, come
Like
on.
a glow
And
up.
I just think it would be so cool if Chattanooga took women's health care as seriously as they took taking care of the environment, because both are what give us life.
Mhm.
Like, quite literally. That's not like an overstatement, weird parallel. Like, women are co-creators. We get to give birth. We get to be part of bringing new life to this world.
There was another
And we
stat
should
about
take care of it.
Chattanooga. You might know this, that actually we are one of the highest rates of C-section.
Oh.
Oh, I
Do you
did
know
not know
this?
that. No.
You can find that.
Um,
I learned this when I was going through my home birthing, stuff like that, and they were saying like our rates were higher than most other places, and Matt or Elise can see that. But it was really, so I wish people would take as seriously as
Yeah.
being the dirtiest city, but also maybe the highest C-section rate the same.
Yeah.
That makes sense with the
seriousness.
doula rate too, like to
Right.
have the least amount of doulas or
Or the least
Wait,
amount of OBs.
OBs, yeah.
And yeah, that was what I was like.
But
I'm
probably that too.
right.
Mm,
And that,
yeah.
again, that obviously goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
And I'm never going to shame someone for the way that they choose to give birth. But it does make me curious how often, because they're so overpacked, OBs are in a position where they're going to schedule a C-section. And again, so many women are like, well, I trust the doctor, whatever. This is
Mhm.
easier. I know what time I'm having the baby. I can like get things prepped and right. I understand the allure that someone could want from that. But I also, because I've gotten to give birth the way that I wanted to, know the power and like the coming to self that they're missing out on in that. And I don't want women to be robbed of that because we don't have enough healthcare providers to give them that.
Yeah.
And so to be able to have a standard of care that pulls better, like more doctors and more talent in here, because they know this is a place that they will be supported and get to do the work they want to do. Like I really want to know more about why that is.
Yeah.
Like my brain is now like going, I'm in the
Yeah.
rabbit hole.
Yeah.
I'm trying to come out of
Good.
the rabbit hole.
Stay in
for
the rabbit
plot.
hole.
Well, for the
It's meant
plot
to
of
be.
this, I'm going, yeah.
Part two.
Part
we'll
two.
get into
Part
it,
two.
yeah.
Okay, so I think we've heard a beautiful story, and obviously you've started a really beautiful collective over this too. So I'd love to hear what people can do to get involved, how they can support your cause. I know for us, we've already we've had people under care because of your cause as well. So I would love to know like more what people can do to stay in the loop, support or anything else like that.
Yeah. If you just want to stay in the loop of what's going on, we do a Tuesday newsletter. It's kind of just like me talking. Sometimes it's updates. The last 2 weeks has been about the history, how we came to be. Yesterday's newsletter was about our name.
Which you're gonna have to share that story
Okay.
of the name.
Okay. And but sometimes it's like, hey, this week, this is what I'm working on. I'm meeting with all of our providers, or I've been doing fundraising meetings. Sometimes it's updates. Sometimes it's, here's what we're thinking. It's still kind of finding exactly its like life and purpose, but it's a way to stay kind of in the loop of what's going on and feel connected to the mission. Obviously, funding is a huge piece of the puzzle here. I think all of our providers have wait lists. We are waiting until we hit 35,000 is our first goal, simply because that allows our providers to treat multiple women for a full like standard duration of care. I would just hate to get started and start someone in care and then be like, oh, we can't finish it. And it's like, but I needed more. And so that kind of gives us that freedom to do that. Right now we're at like about $10,000 with a few other gifts on the table. I don't have the exact amounts for those yet. So I'm feeling hopeful about that. I'm really encouraged by how receptive people are. Some of that is, I'm building as I'm going. And so sometimes I can put all of my stuff into fundraising for a week and then I need to put it all somewhere else. But funding is such a big part. This is a community and needing help is cyclical. And the vision that I had when developing this and building this was that there's people drowning, and those are people that aren't getting their basic needs met: food, housing, clothes. I spent a long time like, how do we make people care about their health if they can't, feed their baby, right? But there's also and those are the people that are drowning, and there's a lot of things for them right now. And then there's a ton of people, majority of people are treading water. And it goes all the way back to what you said at the very beginning of people don't have the ability to like step back and see and catch their breath because they're just constantly in survival mode. And I think that's where you see most people, and especially new moms and especially women who are trying to manage a house and work and do all of the things. And they're in that survival mode.
Yeah.
And then there's people in boats. And I think it's my responsibility as someone in a boat to help get as many people in the boat as possible.
I love that.
There is room for everyone to thrive. There's always room at the table. There's always room in the boat. And, you know, who knows when a wave might come that knocks me out of the boat. And I don't have to be fearful of, am I going to get back in the boat? Because there's a whole community of people, and that's what community is, right? And we get to take that ownership and say, you know, we don't have to pay attention. Okay, let me rephrase this. We can operate as a community outside of what is happening in the world. We can say it doesn't matter fully. There, you know, there's things and grants being cut, and that's all very real that's happening right now. But we can also take ownership of our community and say, you know what? You don't have to support women as a whole. You don't have to support new moms. You don't have to support new babies. That's something we take really seriously, and we're going to do that. We get control over that. And so by donating whatever that is, maybe it's $10 a month. That's $100, $120 a year. That is a therapy session. That could be the session where a mom is like, oh yeah, I do need help, and then gets the help. If it's $100, I mean, that's two, you know, full rev experiences for someone. Or again, lots of, that's a full standard of care for pretty much all of our providers. And so the more that we take ownership of that as a community, and we say like, it doesn't really matter what the world's telling us to value right now. We get to choose as a community what we value. And I think that there's enough there that shows that taking care of women is going to be what gives us the society that we all want for.
We'll have to link you below with Sunrise in this video so people can support and donate and stay in the loop with whatever else you're doing.
I can give you all a little QR code too.
Let's do that.
Out at the front.
We would love that. And I love that you said earlier about the $1 trillion investment. So like anyone who donates, even if it's $120, the return on investment of that, not only to the mothers and to the community, is going to come back to the person who donated it, which I think is a really beautiful way to view just giving back. And so this is an amazing opportunity for people to be involved and to change the world through being involved.
And to think about the darkest or hardest moment or experience of your life, there's typically like one moment that kind of helped shift that. And that could be, again, one of these providers. Maybe it's a session, maybe it's a conversation, maybe it's like a point of connection. Like truly it's life-changing. And
it sounds like just not feeling alone is the pivotal moment for people where they can feel supported.
Feel supported. And I think having a balanced nervous system, everything you were saying is like nervous system, because if your nervous system is balanced and calibrated, your nervous system is what creates the baby's nervous system. Your nervous system is what is running the show during birth and beyond. So that's going to be like the biggest thing, is like building community and having a balanced nervous system. Like those are the two biggest things to have in someone's mind before they have a baby. It's going to change everything.
Game changer.
The need that you're working on is so obvious. You know, we just need to spell it out. We need to keep talking about it. And it's like, once you realize it, like, oh, it makes sense.
Thank you for starting the ball that is so needed.
I'm trying. Like, it is a constant learning for me of like, this does feel so obvious. And so to be able, it is a constant learning on how to have that conversation for people that it is less obvious to. So this has also been helpful for me just to like kind of flex those muscles and work that out a little bit. So thank you.
Thank you for being
here.
Thank you for being brave enough to start something that's changing so many things and about to change everything.
I'm excited, and not to like, again, throw things about funding, but I think it is a special thing of like when women get to receive care, and I don't want any, again, maybe I don't want to say this, but if I hate it, I'll bribe you to cut
Nothing will get cut. Nothing will get cut. Don't worry, guys.
But like, to have that moment of like, oh, wow, I'm getting this care because a stranger, it's building that community. It's saying, no, I see you and I value you and I care about you enough to give of my resources. And I've seen that across providers already, which kind of, no one's officially done care. I want to be like, for legal reasons. That's never happened. But I've seen through some of these early conversations, watching like generosity begets generosity, love begets love. And so creating that cycle of abundance and inviting people into that is a really cool thing to get to do.
Perfectly said.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. And we trust that you have gained some value from Kaitlin's story, from my story, from what Sunrise is doing. And again, we'll have the link to, and a QR code possibly, to be involved, to donate, to follow along. And we're just so grateful for you guys to be here. And we're excited for your journey. If you already are a mom, about to be a mom, no moms, for that to change just through awareness and education and thinking about things differently. So thank you, Kaitlin.
Thank you, Kaitlin. If you enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, follow along. More jam sessions to come.